To keep things interesting, I'll talk about a project that is currently underway at the Ingenesis Project, and I'll describe how a new class of business methods will be introduced to social media. Several months ago, my partners and I were approached by the private aviation sector with the following problem. There are thousands of corporate jets that are underutilized in the economic downturn, and corporate carriers are thinking they would like to migrate passengers from the business class or the first class of commercial airlines into these corporate jets. Their argument is compelling. Private airplanes can fly in and out of about 15,000 U.S. airports, whereas the commercial airlines are tied to the hub and spoke system, which serve only about 500 airports. So it seems that the private aviation could do well even if they do cost substantially more. One minor problem is that the FAA will not allow the private carriers to sell individual seats on aircraft without a special certification. So the private aviation industry came to us to see if maybe social media could be used as a way for people to self-aggregate around certain routes in what amounts to maybe flash charter flights. So here is our solution. It's called an airplane game. The airplane game is an application of game theory in a social network, or more formally, it's a multi-agent systems algorithmic game. In this example, there are 4 players participating in the same social network: the traveler, the carrier, the destinations community, and something called a true value calculator. All these elements, they are not so much sharing information as they are filtering huge quantities of information. The game starts when everyone sets their filters to include what information they want to present to the game. And the game will return the most favorable transactions and their relative values. Here is just one of thousands of possible scenarios. Suppose a couple of economics professors from Bellingham, Washington, wanted to go skiing at Vail during winter break. Flying on a commercial airline takes 14 hours door to door each way, passing through 2 hubs and requiring 2 extra overnights. The round-trip airfare would cost about $600 if booked 4 weeks in advance. The extra overnights would cost about $400 more for a total of about $1,000. Meanwhile, a round-trip ticket on the private jet would take about 3 hours door-to-door and cost about $1,500. The difference is $500. So now suppose the Hilton Hotel sees these 2 professors coming to town for a week. Hilton will see the possibility of selling 10 guest nights if they can entice the travelers to book the rooms at the Hilton. So they look into their advertising budget and they pull out $100 and give it to each professor if they choose the Hilton. Now the difference in the airfare is $400 if they stay there. Upon seeing this transaction, several local bars and restaurants throw $5, $10, or $20 in contingency coupons at the airfare as well. Ski equipment manufacturers and neighboring ski slopes all throw incentives at the passengers too. After a while, the difference between the private flight and the commercial flight is only about $200. Now, factor in the social costs. Suppose that each of their professors value their time at $100 per hour. Their time is valuable because this is time taken away from their family, from their children, from their community, and from other alternate business opportunities. The private flight then becomes the superior choice. So they tell all their friends on Facebook and Twitter, and 10 more professors and members of the Bellingham Ski Club all clamor to jump on the jet. Unfortunately, the plane only carries 8 people. So the carrier puts a bigger plane in to meet the market rather than trying to get the market to fit into the plane. Now everyone in Vail is dropping coupons against this jet, bringing the net cost down even further. So the true value calculator will make a direct comparison between the 2 options, commercial versus private, and then factor in the social value. The true value calculator will then issue a par value of, say, $30 per hour. This means that if your time is valued at less than $30 per hour, it's better that you fly commercial. If its value is greater than $30 an hour, you're better off flying private. Now, a few more interesting things start to happen. The more information that the passengers add, the cheaper their plane fare becomes. We already know that the economics professors are skiers, but what if they say they're photographers and they're mountain climbers and wine lovers? They enjoy the theater and they have a large and influential social network. Therefore, the more vendors will be willing to drop coupons against your airfare. The more information that the carrier has, the better they can schedule flights. Now, taxis and tour guides, hotels, museums, theaters will start dropping inventory into the game. People will begin gaming the game in a way that influences the true value calculator, which will constantly keep score between two or more options. Now, entrepreneurs will generally not make a bet without odds. Every time this game plays out, it generates a lot of data, which are then used to make predictions about future games. Entrepreneurs will use these predictions to buy inventory from all over town and drop it into the game in ways that will impact the par value. Entrepreneurs can buy options on blocks of hotel rooms. They can buy options on blocks of seats for, say, spring break or in advance for Mardi Gras. Or they can place a bet on where the World Series of the NBA playoffs will be. This will just go on and on. Now, this is not strange. Something similar happens with Google right now. A billion-dollar industry has arisen in the field of search engine optimization. Legions of SEO engineers make a living gaming the Google algorithm. The more they game it, the more information they deliver back to Google, who then improve the algorithm, which improves the game and improves the engineers playing it. So this is how the airplane game will go about. So what's unique about all this? We see that there is no overreaching corporation that controls any aspect of the market. There's no central body controlling supply and demand. It is completely dynamic. We also see that social media is not just some cheap new channel to peddle products, steal identities, and spam people. Social media is an integral part of the business plan. This is very different. Social media is the substrate of productivity. It's got a seat at the board of directors. We also see that people can sell their own information. Why would anybody in the world give their information to Facebook for free? So why in the world would any advertiser pay Google for banner ads when they can contact the perfect customers directly? So as we can see, this is hugely disruptive to many of the established titans of our time here. Another difference is that everyone is a corporation. If you are in fact selling your information, the amount of profit that you realize is proportional to the quality and the quantity of that information you provide. In effect, this rewards people in a market for their education, their interests, their intellectual capital, their social capital, and their creative capital. People will be rewarded for doing exactly the things that they enjoy doing anyway. People will be rewarded for the size and the quality of their social networks. In general, the game rewards high integrity and it punishes low integrity. So if you're doing dirty deals, your social value will take a hit. So once the game is in play, people are going to try to innovate all kinds of new and creative ways to game the game. People will try to influence the true value calculation to their advantage and take a profit. They will take ownership of their information, they'll take ownership of their community, and they'll take ownership of their markets. So the jet does nothing more than simply convert financial currency into a social currency. This is an abstraction at this point, and we'll hone in more on what this means, but it also is an entirely new way to talk about consumption. So if we are successful with this implementation, we will create an entirely new class of business methods. So now we apply the same concept to another shared asset like a zip car. A zip car costs about $8 an hour to drive, which is convenient, but that's a lot to add to a movie ticket or a lunch with your pals at the sidewalk cafe. You still need to return the zip car to the same place where you picked it up to get your old car back so you can drive home. There are a bunch of other rules and restrictions that add friction to that transaction. Now, zip cars have been around for a while, and they do pretty well, but they certainly are not ubiquitous. Now, suppose that the movie theater, the bistro, the theme park, or museum knew that you and your family were looking for something to do on a Saturday afternoon. Well, they could pay for your zip car to drive to the event. Now, who says you need to leave in the same zip car that you arrived in? So after this game plays out, statistically, there will be zip cars correctly located all over town. Your cell phone can tell you where they are, and the zip car company could even predict where a zip car will be needed next. The True Value Calculator will calculate the difference between a zip car, owning your own car, or taking public transportation, or even comparing the net cost of several alternate events. So now the stored value is in the zip car, and it's dependent on the social priorities of the traveler. Now we can generalize this further to include any shared asset. Ultimately, the value contained in all public infrastructure can be used to underwrite a social currency that will hedge the dollar as it implodes under the weight of insurmountable debt. That debt was originally created to finance public infrastructure like roads, bridges, highways, healthcare, education, civil services, and an effective legal system. So obviously, the social value and the human productivity will still be there. They won't disappear regardless of what happens to the currency. So if the dollar does tank, entrepreneurs can simply put their inventory into the game instead, and it will play out as it may, just like money. The difference is that now the system responds to social priorities instead of Wall Street priorities. Of course, in reality, this is all quite a bit more complicated than it sounds here. There are security concerns, anonymity issues, an accounting system is needed, tracking, vetting, data skimming, conversions, and a host of other things that all need to fall in place. So the next set of lectures will go into one level deeper to try to expose and hopefully solve some of the problems. In the end, however, it'll be up to the social entrepreneurs to integrate among themselves and build this system. The next set of lectures is called Wicked Tools. Here's where we will start to frame up the underlying algorithm that will manage the game. After that, we'll discuss the accounting system for the inventory that everyone will put into play.